the event and exactly what will transpire tomorrow. But in studio this morning, I'm not alone as we take a look at what's been making headlines in the country and, of course, in the papers as well. Hasbon Owila, media and political communications expert. A very good morning. Good to see you this Thursday. Quite chilly, but I think it's a good day. And we also do have Jim, India policy and governance analyst as well. A very good morning, Jim. Good to see you this morning.
Good to see you too.
And we'll also be joined in just a moment by Joe Halende, who is a lawyer and political analyst, just for us to try and make sense of some of the issues that have been raised in the country. We're going to begin with the Daily Nation, and this is what we have on the front page of the DN. The big standoff over tax law. What is a tussle? Opposition leaders are also demanding that all rebel MPs who defected to be stripped of their seats. Is just among the issues that we're going to be having a discussion around. So a fresh standoff looms today between Raila Odinga's Azimio la Umoja and President William Ruto's Kenya Kwanza after a midnight ultimatum for the government to withdraw finance bill, which they say is laden with the punitive proposals, lapsed last night. And even yesterday, from the picture that we're seeing, those are members of the public service sector unions who participated in a procession outside Parliament buildings in Nairobi on Monday to protest against the tax proposals in the finance bill. It's a big issue because it's one that has touched the nerves of many. We're going to take a look at what page 4 continues to say on this particular story before we hear what our panelists have to say. And there you have it. Showdown looms as Azimio talks tough on the finance bill and also the Jubilee crisis. We're going to begin with that. Hasbon, when you're looking at this whole issue, it's something that has really generated a lot of heat and a lot of debate. Now, yesterday, we saw Raila Odinga's team also making, their statement and their position known with regard to the issue of the finance bill. I want to hear, what you make of this, because they're saying, first of all, they are suddenly going to reject the finance bill in Parliament once the National Assembly resumes. I think that's on the 6th of June. That's next week. What do you make of it? Is a threat called for by the Azimio team?
Well, I think Azimio is just riding on what many Kenyans have expressed in the public domain. Up to now, there are more than 151 petitions that have been presented to the committee in Parliament, and they're all against the bill. And I think that's the work of the alternative voice, in a democracy like ours, that the alternative voice must then pick the voices of the people and pronounce those voices, so much so that the establishment, listens to the people. So from where I sit, I think it's basically what Kenyans are saying, and Azimio, as that alternative that puts the government on its toes, has essentially picked on that. And, a final reading of the finance bill basically tells you that there's a lot that we are not being told, There are a lot of finer, granular issues that we are not being told. And if anyone has been following the committee in Parliament, we realize that different stakeholders in different, sectors of the economy, from insurance, from civil servants, from even media owners, have presented petitions, and they've expressly, articulated the finer details that people don't know in the finance bill. The artists who are generating content online, have come out, and they've said that a government that has not supported, their content generation, enterprises is now looking at, taxing them punitively, So unless you provide that enabling environment that makes people make, money and create wealth, it becomes very tenuous for you to start talking of we can generate money from this point, And I think one of the critical things that emerge, for many Kenyans is the fact that even compensation on insurance is going to be taxed, pick, a normal border guy who gets an accident with his border and he's compensated, and then, there's a tax on the compensation. So how will this border then recover, his border and continue with his business? So, these are the things you would expect, different political formations to contend on. And I think it is just prudent that Azimio takes this not necessarily.
Do you think it's fair to sort of peg the issue of the finance bill now on, you know, this already there's a standoff on the bipartisan talks, and now adding these fresh demands of the finance bill proposals?
Well, I mean, I don't think everything should be you know, geared towards scuttling the bipartisan talks, yeah. But from what Azimio has all along talked about, it's the cost of living. And I think there is a sense in which, if you look at the finance bill, you know, the proponents of the finance bill have not clearly explained how the finance bill is going to address the cost of living.
All right.
So for me, it's not a question of what Azimio, you know, would do. It's a question of Azimio has said something which needs to bring people on the table. So if there is a way in which the finance bill is going to reduce the cost of living, I mean, it needs to be articulated, you know, and I want to believe that...
so you're saying it's well within their right?
Yes, I think we've shared platforms with so many Azimio people. I don't know whether they are here today, but they can actually share light on how it is going to reduce the cost of living.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll get to that. Joe Kalende, lawyer, political analyst, a very good morning. Good to see you. Welcome to the panel. But I'm going to get to you in a moment. But I want to hear from Jim first of all. Jim, your initial thoughts on everything that is happening surrounding, you know, the finance bill, and now Azimio's fresh demands on this whole issue, saying they're going to, you know, first of all, continue suspending the bipartisan talks if that new demand is not met, which is the withdrawal of the finance bill 2023 proposals. What do you make of it?
You remember Azimio's first take on the finance bill was that this is Kenya Kwanza's bill, and they will have nothing to do with it. And I remember that time thinking, this is such a hopeless opposition. This is such an ineffective opposition declaring to Kenyans that we cannot absolutely help you. And they had to go back to the drawing board and say, you have to come up with alternatives, because while the finance bill appears in part to have certain punitive measures that would further make life unbearable for many Kenyans, the opposition could not just come to the public and say there's absolutely nothing we can do. So when they went to the committee, we have, you know, opportunities at the committee level to present your petitions to the committee. Some of us presented petitions to that committee. And it is at that level that then that committee will prepare a report which will be presented to the floor of the House, where voting will happen. So I think Azimio did their calculations and realized we cannot win at the committee level, we cannot persuade at the committee level, we cannot persuade on the floor of the House, because we do not have the requisite numbers to actually vote against this bill. So their only alternative, and which in my opinion, if you think about advocacy, is a legitimate option, is threaten, even to the point, they only fell short of saying they will go to the streets. And I think it is a viable option to say, if the government insists, because we've heard from Kenya Kwanza saying they will not, you know, change even a comma of that particular bill. If they insist on pushing that bill down the throats of Kenyans, then there needs to be an alternative way, right, of either going to the courts, and going to the courts after the fact, because you cannot go to courts now. You have to wait until it's done, then go to courts and prove that it is unconstitutional. It was passed in either on procedural grounds or on more substantive grounds. But as that happens, you also have the option of going to the streets, because what that does is that it puts pressure on the government of the day to then take action. And so, as an opposition, those are all the weapons in your arsenal that you can deploy. Because at the end of the day, you want to be heard, and you want the government of the day to take you seriously. If you cannot win on the floor of the House, you have to change tact, find elsewhere where you can win the war. If you can win it on the streets, go on the streets and win it there. If you can win it on the courts and you have merits and grounds to do so, then go to the courts and do so. And so I think this, for me, it is part of a wider scheme to just ensure that as an opposition, you're doing that job of keeping the government accountable. And they're doing it fantastically so far.
Let's hear from Joe on what you make of all this that is happening. Some say that there's an issue of messaging from the government with regards to the issue of the finance bill. Is it a messaging issue, or there's actually a lot of just things that need to be fixed within the finance bill?
Thank you so much for having me here today. But I want to look at the issue that we are tackling today as a country from a different angle and from a different trajectory. The biggest burden that we have as a country, it is not about taxation. It is about our national debt. For the last 10 years, we have been living beyond our means. For the last 10 years, we have been borrowing. And we have reached at a point where we can no longer continue borrowing. To an extent that now, out of our revenue collection, 80% of our revenue collection is going to China to pay our national debt. So the biggest thing that the government is trying to sort out today, it is about our national debt. If you are to say other issues about opposition and the position that opposition is going to take, we are at an interesting time where the opposition of today was in government yesterday. And they know this problem very well and in details to an extent that they cannot hide away from this discussion. As a country, we need to have a discussion and we need to go to a position where are we in a position to pay this debt or are we in a position to default? And if we are to default, what are the options as a country? Because that is the monster in the room.
So you're saying it is because of the debt situation in the country that we find ourselves in this position, but then is it a legitimate reason to, you know, increase, is it taxes? Can we say increase the taxes for Kenyans? Because many economists say that this is not sustainable, it's punitive for Kenyans who don't have disposable incomes right now.
Yes. Look at this scenario. Last month, we paid our debt. We remain with some few amount of money in the country. The government could not be able to pay the salary on time. So it had to look for money somewhere else. The way this government has tried to address the issue, it has said, yes, we must understand the situation that we are in. We must pay the debt and we must be able to continue functioning as a government, to provide services, to pay salaries, to continue with development. So that is the position we are in. How does this government try to address the issue? Now, increase the tax bracket, collect enough revenue, pay the debt, and continue your services as a normal government. So we are being, in this finance bill, the government is proposing to collect almost 2.9 trillion. In the last budget, it was around, it has actually doubled from what we were proposing in last budget. So it is in a position where you cannot say just it's about cost of living. We must be able to understand the situation we are in as a government, and this situation originates from the debt that we borrowed, from the money we borrowed outside there, and we must pay.
But let me ask you this. I mean, is it fair when you hear statements from members of parliament allied to the Kenya Kwanza team making statements like, we are going to pass this bill just the way it is, no comma, no nothing. We're going to, pass it as it is. But remember, under the new constitution, there's the issue of public participation. Every bill must go through public participation. And Kenyans have a lot of views on this issue of the finance bill. So by saying that, is Parliament, in essence, the members of Parliament who are allied to, the current administration, fair by making such kind of statements?
You see, in every market there must be a madman. And even in Kenya Kwanza, we might have one or two people there who do not believe in the tenets of democracy. We are a democratic society. The majority might have their way, but the minority must have their say.
All right.
Even if, as Kenya Kwanza, they believe that they have the numbers, enough numbers in parliament to pass the bill, but they must give the minority time and the floor to have their say and give us alternative views. As my co-panelists have said, Azimio must come with alternative views. They should not just criticize, but they must table an alternative view. Yes.
All right. Yes.
Just to say, one is just to say that as of 6 months ago, we were only using 55% of our revenue to pay debt, not 80, 55%.
All
At least
right. So
that's
that
verified reports. And number two, It's the fact that a lot of that debt is actually domestic debt. A lot of that money is going towards paying domestic debt and not necessarily to China. So a lot of the money that we owe it to our local banks, and we're paying it internally. It's not going outside. And number 3 is that also this government has not shown any, it's spending more on recurrent expenditure than on quote-unquote development. So a lot of what we're seeing, a lot of the appointments, a lot of the monies that are being allocated are going towards recurrent expenditure, paying bills here, paying trips there. And so for a government that is asking us to tighten our belts and is asking Kenyans to give more money, to dig deeper into their pockets, they are not showing any signs of tightening our belts and cutting on government wastage. And that for me is the problem, that you want it both ways. You want to get more taxes from Kenyans, but you do not want to streamline government so that we reduce how much you're spending on recurrent expenditure within government, but we also reduce how much you're borrowing internally. As has always been said, you cannot tax your way to wealth. Taxes are not a means by which countries then create wealth. What you're essentially doing to your citizens is that we cannot spend more in this economy. So you'll tax us to death. We cannot spend on the economy. The biasharas that are running, we cannot buy things. So you don't grow the economy. You actually, taxes are a good way of stifling this economy. It's a good way of ensuring that people cannot spend, people cannot invest. And that is the problem, that you want to grow an economy. You rode into power on an economic agenda, but everything that you're doing, every policy that is coming in place is not showing signs of growing an economy. It's showing signs of actually choking that economy further.
But then how do you expect the government to raise revenue to help, in terms of developing infrastructure, increase and help and improve services like the healthcare services? Doesn't the revenue come from taxes?
Okay, so one, it's government does, that revenue is important, right? What I'm saying is, number one, it's not showing signs that it's actually generating revenue to spend on development. That's just on paper, 6-7 months down the line, there are no signs of that. A lot of what you've seen is wastage. But number 2, that is the place of, today, if you look at international relations, the place of public-private partnerships. There are a lot more governments are going into this business of how do we create an enabling environment for people to come in and invest in our infrastructure, to invest in our health space, to invest in our roads, on our standard gauge railways and the rest of it. That's what you do as a prudent government. You don't come in and say that you want to create, how many jobs can you create as government? We have very few guys who are employed within government, but you can create an environment that actually encourages more people to come. Okay. You're taxing business people more, small businesses more. So how is that? Because these small businesses, ultimately, they're the guys who are going to create a health center here. Kenyatta Hospital can only serve a few people, but we need a few more clinics run by private individuals that can actually serve more Kenyans.
All right. Okay.
Now,
yes.
I know the Chinese embassy in Kenya is not happy to hear that 80% of our revenues is going to pay debts in China, and I'm happy Jim has corrected that. Now, I think there are very critical issues that Joe has raised. One, that we cannot live within, we cannot afford to live if we are not living within our means. And the president has emphasized that enough times. And their taxation model is to tax us so much so that we live within our means and pay our debts. But I think they need to explain 3 key things. One, if you're going to have VAT on fuel from 8 to 16, how are you going to raise money to pay our debts? Number 2, if you're going to have tax levied on content creators at 16%, how are you going to raise more money? And then number 3, on insurance compensation. There's no way you're going to raise more money unless they explain. Because what you're doing is you are getting money from people who are trying to create wealth and expand their businesses to afford the government a wider platform to collect taxes. The natural thing to do is to provide an enabling environment that will help people create wealth. Taxes actually deny people the opportunity to invest more and expand their business, especially if we are taxing and there is no clear pathway to how that tax is coming back to benefit the common mwananchi. And I think that's where Kenyans are, that Kenyans understand that once money goes to the government with the regime that we've had in the past and even what we have right now, and the corruption that has become endemic and just out of control, they don't see how the taxes that we are going to give this government will come back to help us. But I think at the bottom of all this is, how do they explain when you increase the cost of fuel, when you start taxing people whose creative industry is not supported by any governmental framework, when people who have invested in capital goods lose those goods, and then you tax the compensation on those goods, they are likely to run out of business. And therefore, it is like shooting yourself in the foot when you say we want to pay debt and live within our means by taxing people more. Countries, developed countries that are suffering the consequences of people migrating in those countries, are actually talking of countries in the global south offering their citizens tax breaks so that these citizens can create wealth. Because if you create wealth, you'll be in a position to ask yourself, what else can I do for my country? How do I, create more spaces for people to develop? How do I get myself a situation where I can make more from the wealth that I've made? And the more you're making more, the more the government can tax you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Joe.
Yes, my co-panelists are talking about government creating an enabling environment. How does government create an enabling environment when the opposition declares that 2 days in a week are for maandamano? And this maandamano, the same opposition say it's holiday, no going to work. How does the government create an enabling environment in such a condition when you're talking about creating an enabling environment? As we speak today, the Kenya Kwanza government led by the president has had bilateral talks with German, the German envoy was here, by Prime Minister of Japan was here, the president went to France, the president was in the UK, the president was in the US. All these are geared towards creating an enabling environment, are geared towards wooing investors to come to this country. Moses Kuria is a minister who is always traveling.
But is it
Why?
tangible? Is it
Why is he
tangible?
traveling? He's traveling to look for investors. He's traveling to try and convince governments and other private investors to come and invest in Kenya, whereby its citizens, led by the opposition, are saying that we are going to have more extra holidays in a week through maandamano. So, on one side, we must be realistic and understand the situation that we are in as a country. As much as, even if we say, the way my brothers are saying that it's 55% of our, what we are paying is 55% of our revenue. In normal instance, if you are, in normal ways, even in your household, if you are going to pay more than 30% of your income to pay debt, then you are in debt distress. So as we speak now, as a nation, we are in debt distress.
But so
in US, their debt distress is at 13%, but they are making a lot of noise. Here it's 55. We are in trouble. You saw what happened in Ghana. Ghana, the government wakes up in one day, say, now, guys, we can't be able to pay our debt. We are going to default. In Sri Lanka, it happened. In Lebanon, it happened. So, the government of Kenya today, as much as my brother criticizing that that we cannot tax people into prosperity, but now we are in this situation. We need to handle it. We need to have a conversation as a country. And I'm happy that this debate is ongoing. The only problem that we may have is with the people who are saying that we can't change a comma, we can't change a full stop. We must have a conversation across the board. The people of insurance, from public service, across the board. We must have a discussion and reach an agreement that now this is where we can manage. And this is how we are going to handle this country.
And certainly a lot of
on other issues to do with wastage in government, as much as we may have other issues, but I'm very critical with the way the president has handled the issue of corruption. He has shown us signs that he's the first president in our history of this country to commit that a shilling, a penny in this government matters to him. And anybody, as much as you supported him, as much as you are his friend, and you are going to be involved with corruption, there's only one route: home and going to court. So on that one, I'm 100% sure that the president and the Kenya Kwanza government is committed.
Right? We'll have to wait and see the actions, correct?
Yes.
All right, look, we have to take a very quick break on AM Live, but we will be continuing with the conversation. We'll be winding up on the papers. We really just started. We haven't gone deep into the papers, but when we come back, we'll just have to wind up very quickly on the papers and then get into the matter of our conversation this morning as well. So stay tuned. The hashtag we're using this morning, as always, is AM Live NTV at NTV Kenya. At Zainab Ismail, talk to us. We're going to be back in a short while.
Are you an artist or content creator? Would you like to monetize your content and make passive income? Join us today on Skiza Nation by reaching out to us on our social media platforms or send us an email at skiza@ke.nationmedia.com or call us on 0719 038 575. Skiza Nation, supporting local talent.
Yeah. Jam down family wagwan. You know how we do it. Kila saa tu mazee live. Step out of Babylon. On your screens mazee from 10 p.m. up until 12. You na Shix Kapienga hapa hivi. DJ Mo, unakuaje?
Aisha kwa mtu wangu jo manze vile si ufanya pale hivyo tunasababisha na miondoko.
I lost my way to Abervilla. Can't help you.
Na pia tunawapatia 1212 hapo ngoja wote kuwaletea reggae news. Na hii sasa mtu wangu kuna venue tutakuwa tuna host one of the hosts wenye wanaenda pale kwenye clubs watuambie formation ya ma club na ma host ni nini.
With a wheelie bend.
So join us this Saturday live on NTV mazee kuanzia saa 4 mpaka saa 6. Kama kawa, Boss Spice, Shix Kapienga. This Jam Down.
Jam Down KE. Shake your body.
Shake your butt. Crystal Rivers Residences, adjacent to the Nairobi Expressway. 3 bedrooms with master en suite. You and your loved ones will experience fine living. Furusha your landlord with our special offer of 50K per month. The future of fine living.
I'll give you anything you want, but just don't ruin my image, please. Don't ruin my image. Mamu! Mamu!
Boss! Nilo! Geni heshima ameingia. Hili game hatari sana.
To protect our family from germs that cause illness when it's cold, we use Dettol soap.
Dettol soap with germ defense gives you protection. When it's cold, germs are transferred in different ways. And Dettol soap's germ defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol sure.
It's the headquarters of good vibes. So I should just kneel and begin to call on Jesus because I'm a bishop.
You know, Dr. Kingori, yes, you sound like a street fighter. Where did you grab it? Unataka noma.
Kingori, let me tell you something. Mimi mtu angenipata saa hiyo nikiwa first year. Angeangukia bibi mzuri.
You know, they always say smart women Where to catch them is with love.
Kingori, I love how your suit looks. I love you in a suit. I love you in a t-shirt.
As in any example, you actually mean that. Maifungua akili ya msee ama kichwa ya msee ukapata vile watu husema huyu jamaa ana akili.
Tunaweza toa nyama kwa huko nyuma tuweke kwa
kifua. Sisi mtu anakuwa na roho chafu sana. Na ukidive inahesabiwa?
Si ndio, ukiwin udive win si umewin.
Hiyo ndio tizi unafaa upige. Napiganga tu tizi ya 90 meters ya kwanza, alafu nikifika 90 meters na fly. Every Friday on NTV 7:30 p.m.
Wicked Edition in association with Showmax.
I invited Robert today for my sisters to meet him.
Hi. Wait a minute. I know that beard.
Cascadia Apartments at Two Rivers Development in Nairobi with a Madaraka offer till 30th June 2023. Price start from 9.2 million. Call us today on 0742 342 722 or text Cascadia to 22365.
All right, welcome back and thank you for staying with us as we take a look at what's been making headlines in our dailies this morning. You're watching AM Live and I was just trying to scroll on a couple of stories here. This is something that we'll have a discussion around, so I don't want us to touch on it right now. War Council, in quotes, to fight for Jubilee's soul. Former President Uhuru Kenyatta has crafted a fresh team of seasoned politicians, career civil servants, business magnates and grassroots mobilizers in his bid to revive the Jubilee Party and maintain its control amid an onslaught by President William Ruto. The former president and Azimio One Kenya leader Raila Odinga accusing the president of meddling in the party's affairs. Odinga threatening to end the bipartisan talks if Kenya Kwanza does not, continue interfering with the coalition's affiliates. And you can see some of the faces there: Jeremiah Kioni, David Murathe, Maison Leshomo, Jamle Kamau and Saitoti Toromo. I'll be coming to give you a glimpse of what the team entails and what really their positions are for, this new fight for Jubilee's soul in a moment. But also, senators' warning shot over Odwal's impending ouster. Senators have fired a warning shot at Siaya members of County Assembly over their plan to impeach Deputy Governor William Odwal, cautioning that any plot to oust him on frivolous grounds will be resisted. Now, those who spoke to Nation paper yesterday said they were concerned about the happenings in Siaya, where MCAs on Monday approved Odwal's ouster. The Assembly formed a 14-member special committee that will investigate the allegations leveled against the Deputy Governor and table its report. And also, what we do understand is Nandi Senator Samson Cherargei said they sense a sinister motive in Odwal's ouster, given that he had made corruption allegations against the James Orengo administration. So that is what is happening in Siaya County at this point. Lawmakers say they have a role to protect the counties. And then Uhuru Mudavadi meet in Nigeria. You can see former President Uhuru Kenyatta there during a meeting with Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi in Abuja. That's in Nigeria. The two leaders are attending the inauguration of Bola Tinubu as the 16th President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Moving forward, no respite for the retired as bills deplete their pensions. I'd like to hear from you gentlemen on what you think of this story. So listen to this. At least 2 in 5 pensioners use the money they receive after retirement to pay their, children's school fees, and 88% of retired people are still dependent on their children, grandchildren and extended family members. Of those who still depend on pensioners for their livelihoods, nearly half are aged 21 and above, while a quarter are over 25. This is according to a new survey that sheds the light on the harsh realities older Kenyans face after retiring from the workforce. This survey was done by the Retirement Benefits Authority, also revealing the burden senior citizens continue to carry to their sunset years, a time when they would be expected to rest after decades of toil as the country's dire unemployment rate leaves energetic young people and their children, in some cases relying on meager pensions from their parents to survive. Let me begin with you, Jim. When you're looking at this, I mean, it's quite an unfortunate reality, but it is what is happening right now. They're talking about 2 in 5 pensioners who use their money to pay school fees to take care of young people, that bracket between 21 to 25 years of age, because of the high rate of unemployment. They should be sitting down, enjoying their pension, perhaps, doing something with their, that little money that they're going to get from, the benefits during their sunset years. But here they are struggling to make ends meet. What, 70 years, 80 years age? It's quite unfortunate. What do you make of it?
It is quite unfortunate. I think the study just didn't go into saying how many of them actually get their pensions are actually delayed.
Right.
Because there's another story in the daily showing how much pensions are not being paid because how much it has accrued. But that is part of the problem of when you look at our demographics, and we keep saying that when you have the demography like the one we have in Kenya, where a huge percentage of your population is young, 75. It can be a blessing or a curse. You can either reap dividend from it, or it can actually become catastrophic. And part of the catastrophe that we have here is a lot of this 75% young people are dependents. So they are not actively taking part in economic development and in production in this country. They're depending on their parents. And then worse still is a lot of them are unemployed. Worse is now, even as you're going, is a lot of them now cannot even access education. So, and then in a highly, in an economy that rewards education, majority of them now cannot even access education. So it is a systemic problem. What we are seeing at the top of the pensioners, those above 70 who should be enjoying their sunset years, what we are seeing that is symptomatic of actually what's going on at the bottom of the pyramid, which is this huge population. And our leaders and politicians keep talking about them, development partners, that we have these young people that if we do not properly take care of them, then they could be a ticking time bomb. Because now part of the problem is you have these pensioners who are not able to invest in anything meaningful in the economy except pay bills. So they're paying rent, they're paying school fees, they're paying hospital bills. They're also sick.
And the dependents are mainly their children and
yes,
their grandchildren.
Their children and their grandchildren. Because now you have your son who has, kids at home, he has no job. You're seeing these grandchildren need school fees. So they have to take care of them. So they're not investing in anything meaningful. But again, there's no hope, even as you're investing in their education. Down the line, you're not seeing how the returns on that investment, because the sorry state of unemployment in this country. So ultimately, you're spending your money, all your money on these children going to school. They are not able to get employment or even get into entrepreneurship because, again, let me blame it on the finance bill. But they're not even able to do that. So ultimately, what I'm saying is it is symptomatic. And to cure it, we have to go back to the root cause, which is how do we deal with the unemployment issue, access to education, how do we have better healthcare infrastructure. We do that, then we cushion the elderly in our society.
Right.
But we also had Pesa kwa Wazee, which we removed. And that was all part of looking at, because these are older people who are working. Now think about the majority who are not working, formally employed. They are still taking care of their grandchildren. They're still taking care of their children in one way or another. So the burden on them is even a lot more worse, and they are the majority. So, I mean, it's a story state
right.
But it could be our story. It could be my story as well.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, you wouldn't know, 40, 40, 50, 60 years down the line.
Down the line,
right.
When I get to that age, I'll be taking care of my children and my grandchildren the same way my grandparents are doing, if we don't do anything meaningful to question us.
Yeah, Hesbon, quite a sad reality.
It is. I mean, it's a sad reality if you look at it against the backdrop of what our parents did and what we are currently doing. I think most of the pensioners that you're talking about right now had invested quite heavily by the time they were in their
30s, quite heavily, you know, and I'm looking at my parents and my parents' friends and generation, what they managed to achieve, you know, that I look at myself and my age and I'm thinking, how did my dad do that with the salary that he had? And if this is just, you know, a microcosm of what is happening, it means that things are likely to be a lot more worse for us because we are not as early investors as they were. We didn't get as much opportunities that they got. I think most of our parents were clearing fourth form and there were opportunities around. Today you have to finish your undergraduate, look for a master's, and then after that you're told you're too qualified, but you understand nothing because there was no opportunity to do anything after undergraduate, and it becomes a bit complicated. But the worry is most of the countries or societies that have a younger population are supposed to be privileged and advantaged because they have a working population. Now, if you compare Kenya, for instance, and Germany, you would actually say that we are privileged because we have a younger population. But the disadvantage is they have nothing to do. You know, so that energy is not expended in any gainful, you know, enterprise. And that's why these bilateral engagements that Joe has talked about that the president is having, you know, the cost of manufacturing most of the things that we buy here in Kenya, like a Nike sneaker, the cost of manufacturing it in the US is very high. The cost of manufacturing it in China, where a majority of them are manufacturing them, is also extremely high.
Right.
You know, if it was to be brought in this country, to be manufactured in this country, it will be relatively cheap because of the wage bill that they would be paying. And I think those bilateral talks now need to be geared towards those kinds of conversation. I think I've mentioned this enough times. In 2018, the government of China, the Communist Party of China took some of us as think tanks to China to just go and look at how China managed to push people out of poverty. There are no poor people in China, by the way, today. They accomplished that in 2021. Done. No one is living below the poverty line. And one of the key things that they were keen on was a people-to-people kind of relationship. So scale it down from government to government to people, and find opportunities on how, you know, the manufacturing cost that is becoming extremely high, the climate change conversations around manufacturing in China, how do you address them by shifting, you know, some of the manufacturing activities to the global south? And I think we need to position ourselves. If we cannot take these young people to countries where they are going to be gainfully employed, and there are conversations of taking Kenyans to Germany and other countries, then why can't we bring those industries or those manufacturing sectors to Kenya?
So do you agree that perhaps, you know, some of the proposals within the finance bill have been overshadowed by the other, perhaps, negative or punitive proposals there? For example, the issue of taxing, you know, importation of, you know, goods, fish, for example, you know, manufacturing industries here in the country, for example. So build Kenya, buy Kenya, build Kenya. So this is going to help. Isn't it going to also then give Kenyans more jobs, perhaps?
I mean, you see, you cannot build Kenya by taxing everything that is coming outside Kenya. You can only build Kenya by ensuring that that is coming into Kenya, which you need, is manufactured in Kenya. You know, because if you stop something from getting into a market through a punitive tax regime, and yet it's something we need and we can't manufacture, so what are you doing? The end effect is you are germinating an industry of counterfeit. You see, so yes, build Kenya, but start by building Kenya by providing an enabling environment that will bring people who manufacture things that Kenyans and the world need into this country. And I think those are things that the government can do. Now, lastly, let me just say that lastly, the Graduate School of Media and Communication released a study just the other day on Monday. And 3 of the key things that young people want the media to cover, which probably will be addressing some of those issues. Because I don't want to be 60 or 70 and I'm still paying fees for my kids. I'm still buying houses, you know, looking for land to build a house. 3 key things. 1, how they can make money. Number
so this 2, is Gen Z, millennials.
Gen Zs and millennials, how they can make money. Number 2, how they can become financially independent. Number 3, how they can save money. And you see, in the same study, these Gen Zs and millennials are not paying for business news. And the argument in the panel discussion is, how can they say that they need all these things which are business news oriented, yet they're not consuming business news. It is because business news is telling them which company is going down, which company has made profit,
So how
which
does
company
it directly impact them?
I mean, that does not address their issue of how do I make money. They want conversations around how do I start investing in the stock market right now.
Okay.
So much so that in the next 15 years, I can have a base capital to buy a house. And I think those are conversations that need to be channeled towards millennials to address the issue of retirees.
These young people now depending on retirees and pensioners. Joe, your take on this? I mean, when we're looking at the statistics, what are they saying? The proportion of retirees using their money to pay off loans, medical bills and other purposes is 20%. And the average pension received per month, 31,000, with a minimum of 2,100 and a maximum of 400,000. And farming and running a business are the most common economic activities Kenyans engage in after retirement. I don't know why everybody says I'm going to go farming. I don't know if it works.
The bottom line is, we can sum it up as the issue to do with unemployment. And if as a government, if as a people in this country, we channel and focus our energy in terms of job creation, we can sort out some of these things. Because the story here, it's sad.
Yeah.
And the major issue is about unemployment. How do we create jobs for the young people? How do we help our people to access education so that in the market, you can't, you know, there's a story in this country. We have graduates. At the end of the day, you are being told they are semi-skilled. At the end of the day, you are being told that the degree they undergo and the demands from the market, there's a mismatch. How?
Right.
Those are among the issues that we need to discuss.
So it's a
like the
systemic
education
issue.
sector.
I mean, it's a holistic issue.
Yes.
Right.
And it's something that we need to bite the bullet and address and sort it out. On agriculture, the best place where we can reduce the cost of living and we can create many jobs for our people is on agriculture. If we sort out the issue in agriculture the way this government is trying to sort it out, let's have access, because I'm aware in 3 months this government managed to register 5 million farmers through its e-portal. In those 3 months, the government managed to reduce the cost of fertilizer from 7,000 to 3,500. As we speak now, almost 200,000 acres of land in this country has been put into agriculture, and the government is projecting that this time round we are going to have a bumper harvest because of the small rains that we managed to get. So if we are able to invest in sectors that can give our young people an opportunity, it is the best way we can be able to sort out the issue to do with unemployment. And that's bring an interesting discussion, the way the president is leading the discussion on affordable housing. He's saying that the best thing out of this affordable housing is about job creation for the young people, is for the people who are going to be employed within the sector of construction. So these are among the discussions that we need to have, apart from the other discussions that we are talking about. Because if you are to talk about the finance bill, it's easy to point out the difficult areas within the finance bill. But we should also be realistic and be able to point out the good things within this bill. So if we go ahead, how do we operate? Do we pass the bill and say we are going to tighten our belts so that Kenya can move forward? Or do we amend the bills and remove some of the issues that Kenyans have raised and be able to have a comfortable bill so that we can move forward as a country? Yeah.
Okay. All right. Interesting. All right. So I want us to just finish up on the paper. Finally, Maziwa ya Nyayo initiative set for revival in counties. I don't know if you guys remember. For people who went to school during the era of President Daniel Arap Moi, look, I only reached till class 3, so I remember, right? Nothing beats the sweet feeling of a ringing bell announcing the arrival of Maziwa ya Nyayo, Most people remember with the nostalgia those small packets of milk that were distributed in public schools to encourage pupils to stay in school. In fact, it was reported that within the first year of the introduction of Nyayo milk, school enrollment increased by more than 23%, especially in rural areas. Now, nearly 3 decades after the program ended, there's a reintroduction of school milk programs by more than a dozen county governments, which have revived the memories of the free Nyayo milk of the 1980s and 90s, sponsored by the administration of late Moi. Although the program is largely being introduced for preschool children, the motive remains the same: to keep learners in school. Some of those counties that have introduced the school milk program include Uasin Gishu, Mombasa, Embu, Nyandarua, Meru and Murang'a. This is with in collaboration with the new Kenya Cooperative Creameries company. So that's what's happening. I'm sure that Jim, you could have, if you were young, if you were in preschool, you'd have been very happy to receive this news. So this was interesting. I don't know how that will work, but I think it's an amazing project, at least from where I stand. Yeah. And
it's a good thing. It's actually being pushed from the creameries.
Correct.
It's the KCC pushing it. So they're the ones looking for county governments and saying, we can do this with you guys. I think it's a good business model, and they're introducing it to kids who are still rather young. The nutritional benefits, you're able to retain more kids in school.
Exactly. So school enrollment.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's fantastic.
It's a great news, yeah. I don't know what you guys make of it. You want to comment on this?
I like about it. I'm in full support of this program.
Yeah.
One is to keep learners in school and be able to, because even here in Nairobi, I saw Governor Sakaja's statement one day that most of the young people cannot access education because the family cannot be able to provide food. So the best way to keep this school-going children is to be able to help this school to provide food. So I like the idea. The next thing about this idea is about the opportunity to local farmers. Because if these county governments are going to focus on helping the farmers in their respective counties to organize themselves in circles, in chamas, and to be able to sell this milk to county government,
so a boost
then
for dairy
it's a boost to dairy farmer.
Okay.
And also, again, something interesting that we need to know, it's about value addition. When you are talking about value addition, you are talking about job creation, because you need to collect this milk from the farmer, you need to take it to a dairy machine, you need to package it. That is value addition. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 people can get employment there.
All right.
Yes.
And Hesbon, we certainly hope with this program, I think many people agree it's a good one. However, we hope that the shadows of graft will not enter, because Uasin Gishu County government is spending 60 million to provide 40,000 ECDE learners with free milk. That's twice a week. So that's 60 million a week. You can imagine that amount of money. So obviously, we should also be prudent in looking at how that money is utilized as well.
Yeah, I think there's value in giving kids milk, especially the nutritional value and all that. But if you look at the money they're talking about and the fact that, the KCC is just looking at a sustainable business model and outlet for their products, you may want to ask yourself, what is the opportunity cost? What would that amount do to parents whose kids lack nutritional value on a grander scale?
Yeah.
I believe rather than give someone milk, you need to empower them to have cows that they can milk.
Correct.
And all right. People like Food for Education who are equally doing fantastic work of feeding children in this country.
Right.
It would be interesting to see how much it costs them to feed one child vis-a-vis what we're spending on milk. Because again, sometimes these county governments tend to be a bit exorbitant in how they do their pricing. Because perhaps it would be more beneficial to serve kids githeri than serve them milk.
Right.
The nutritional value of that githeri might be higher than what we have in the milk. But yeah, anyway, fantastic program.
All right. All right. Let's move on. I think I'm just going to finish up on this. There's this issue of lawmakers confront Haji over withdrawal of cases. The DPP says withdrew cases after he found that there was no evidence to sustain them. We'll have that discussion in a moment. But also just just adjacent to that, Thuge, I will float dollar bond to ease pressure on shilling. That's the nominee for the Central Bank of Kenya, Governor Kamau Thuge, who's mulling the possibility of floating a local dollar-dominated bond to ease the pressure on the Kenyan shilling. He says will work with the National Treasury to issue the dollar bond with attractive returns to get rich Kenyans and businesses holding over 1 trillion in deposits to release the greenback. And on the Business Daily, South Sudan is asking Ruto to end Joho's port monopoly. That's the South Sudan government which is asking President William Ruto to end the monopoly of a farm associated with the family of former Mombasa Governor Ali Hassan Joho for handling cargo destined for the neighboring country from the Mombasa port through the rail line. In a U-turn, South Sudan's President Salva Kiir now wants Dr. Ruto to allow goods to and from his country to be cleared at the port of Mombasa and not at the Nairobi Freight Terminal. Juba wants small farms, including compact, I think this is console-based MCT, and another company, Mitchell Court, to be allowed to handle its goods to Kenya as it seeks to cut what they term as monopoly. And still on the Business Daily, DTB Group profit jumps 11% on larger loan book, and Sunkin gets 18 billion to fund solar buyers. And just down there, Moses Kuria for KEB's chair. Moses Kuria pick for KEB's chair caught up in 278 million unexplained wealth case. The High Court has frozen more than 19 properties estimated to be worth about 278 million belonging to the new KEB's chairman Jeremiah Kamau Kinyua. The wealth is expected to have been acquired through bribes while he worked at the Kenya Revenue Authority. So that is what is happening. There you have the gentlemen, some of the Dr. Kinyua's frozen property, 3 parcels of land in Ruiru, 5 parcels of land in Nairobi and Kajiado, 1 parcel of land in Laikipia, a vehicle there, also cash amounting to 0.5 million, and also that's in shillings, and in, what is this? Okay, I can't read that, but yeah, that's the amount of money and some of the properties that have been affiliated to the nominee for the KEB's chairperson. All right, so that's what's happening. Taifa leo, Rais msafiri gharama. Rais Ruto amekuwa akiandamana na rubaa kubwa kwa kutumia mabilioni ya pesa ya nchi inayotatizika pakubwa kiuchumi. Sasa we are seeing, ziara za Ruto ugenini mwaka 2012 na mwaka 2022 na pia mwaka 2023. We can see all the places that the president did travel, and the newspaper essentially just talks about the president's outside visits, and of course how that has really affected perhaps the economy because of the huge delegation that does accompany him. Kiongozi wa nchi amefanya ziara 29 nje ya Kenya katika muda wa miezi 8 pekee akiwa madarakani. So what does that mean? You can find that on the second page of the Taifa Leo, and I see that Esbon, you want to respond to this. I'll give you an opportunity when we come back to our discussion. Does it affect, does it change anything when the president is going outside to talk, to help, perhaps bring investments into the country? We'll have a look at that. Al-Shabaab attack. Uganda 6 answers officials describe as sad and unfortunate. News of deadly ambush in Somalia base. That's the publication between 27th of May to the 2nd of June. And finally on the Standard here, let's see, let me just close this. Can I close this? Okay, that's difficult to close, but okay, I'm just going to have to leave the Standard for now. I will have a look at the Standard hard copy, but this is what it says. It's back to the streets, and that's what we'll be also talking about. But I want us to have a look at a report here that was filed by our political affairs reporter Vincent Odwor, where President William Ruto has did actually have until midnight yesterday to heed to demands by the opposition coalition Azimio, including withdrawing the controversial Finance Bill 2023. This is according to a resolution by the Azimio parliamentary group meeting chaired by the coalition leader Raila Odinga. Let's have a look at that report. We'll be back.
The Azimio parliamentary group meeting has resolved that President William Ruto must now immediately lower the high cost of living stop the selection of new IEBC commissioners, and preserve the IEBC servers.
The finance bill as presently crafted must be withdrawn and replaced by a bill that appreciates the suffering of the people, the suffering the people of Kenya are going through. Never has a regime tasked our people to sacrifice so much by way of taxes for so little by way of gains.
The leaders seemed infuriated by what they have termed as President Ruto's move to attack and raid Azimio affiliate political parties.
Other than merely committing not to interfere in the affairs of other parties, Kenya Kwanza must agree that all Jubilee MPs, and indeed any other MPs, who have defected to Kenya Kwanza, in essence, have to face by-elections.
The opposition coalition insists that for now, the talks by the Azimio Kenya Kwanza bipartisan committee meant to resolve opposition grievances against President Ruto's government will remain suspended.
Kenya Kwanza has up to midnight today to comply.
But what will happen if President Ruto fails to heed to the immediate demands?
We are not taking any questions. Thank you.
The National Assembly is expected to resume its sittings next week as Kenya Kwanza and Azimio legislators vow to square it out on the floor of the House over the fate of the Finance Bill 2023. Vincent Odur, NTV, Nairobi.
All right, so that's a report there by Vincent Odwor, and I want to tie it up with this particular report here. War Council to fight for Jubilee Soul. Now, this is former President Uhuru Kenyatta who's crafting a fresh team of seasoned politicians, career civil servants, business magnates and grassroots mobilizers in his bid to revive the Jubilee Party. So who are the team? You have Uhuru Kenyatta as the party leader, Jeremiah Kioni, Secretary General, David Murathe, Vice Chair, Saitoti Torome, National Chair, Yasin Nur, Deputy Secretary General, Jamlek Kamau, Abdul Kadir Haji, Pauline Joroge. I mean, these were the team that were announced during the National Delegates Conference. So you have this team, and you know it's a fight for survival for the Jubilee Party, which is also part of the issue that is within the bipartisan talks that's been pegged by the Azimio team. So I'm going to begin with you. Let me begin with you, Hesbon, on this whole issue. Do you think, first of all, the Jubilee Party is going to survive this whole, I don't know what to term it, but the leadership wrangles between the two teams. Is Jubilee Party going to survive, or is there going to be an implosion?
I mean, from where I sit, if there was going to be an implosion, by now it would have happened. So the coup plotters were too quick, to plot and not strategic enough to execute, their plot to completion. There is a thin line between, ending up as a president when you plot a coup and ending up in jail. And I think majority of them are now facing the wrath of the public, the ones who plotted to take over Jubilee, and that is the jail that they are facing. Because if you ask me, whoever was responsible for the turmoil and the infighting in Jubilee has probably failed by now, because he managed to get President Uhuru back into the thick of party politics through the debate, and it seems like President Uhuru has just decided that I will take this head on, So from the look of things, it does seem that Jubilee has definitely survived. And for me, it's a good thing for our democracy. I mean, there's still a lot to do for Uhuru's team. Because of the way the registrar of political parties, has been neither here nor there with his handling of the situation. And I think our judicial system has come out very strongly. The Political Parties Dispute Tribunal has come out very strongly to defend the heart and soul of multi-party democracy. So it is just important that, the implosion on Jubilee does not happen. Not because Jubilee has certain figures in it, but simply because we need sanity in our multi-party democracy. We need political parties that can endure beyond, being in power. You know, a situation where PNU took power and, you know, PNU is nowhere to be seen right now is not good for our democracy. And I think our democracy can only be strong if there is solid internal democracy within political parties, and political parties have structures that are respected by members of these political parties.
But let me ask you this, when you have a majority of the members within a political party who are siding to take one position against a few members of the same party, what does that, is that democracy within the party?
But you see, I mean, the membership of a political party is not restricted to elected leaders, you know. So even if you have, you know, majority of the elected leaders in Jubilee trooping to State House and attending Kenya Kwanza parliamentary meetings, and then you have a few remaining with the, let me not say the faction, remaining with Jubilee, because I don't think this is a question of factions. This is a question of members who have decided to take a certain position and they want to drag the entire party. You know, it is parties that take positions. And if members take positions,
but it is the members who make up
if members
a party.
take positions,
right?
They have to use this, the structures within the party, which have to be ratified by the National Delegates Convention. And I think that is what Kioni and his group did, you see. And that is the right channel based on the Jubilee Constitution. So this banded idea that members of parliament, you know, majority of the members of parliament, majority of the NEC members have gone with a clique that has decided that they're in Kenya Kwanza and specifically in UDA, does not necessarily mean that they even represent 5% of the members of Jubilee. I mean, if you look at the Jubilee membership, it is in the millions. So it is those millions through their delegates who can make a decision. So by virtue of being, and you see, elected leaders are just people who've chosen a path in their careers. It doesn't make them any different from a medical doctor, a teacher, a nurse. It doesn't make them any different. They're just elected. And the title we give them is honorable because they went and campaigned. That's it. When it comes to membership of the political party, every other registered member is just equal. And then number two, I want to agree totally, not with Azimio, but with the principle of when an elected leader is given power to go to parliament and represent his people, it is a function of two things. One is the political party that he vies on. And then number two, his political enterprise. And if your political enterprise afforded you that seat, and you feel like the political party that you contested on is not a vehicle that you want to articulate the issues of the people on the floor of parliament, the most honorable thing, and we need to inculcate this in our democracy, is resign, seek a fresh mandate, because you believe that politically you have a cloud. So
is that really fair? Because yes, yesterday, you know, that was one of their resolutions,
fair,
right?
But it is the only thing that will sanitize our politics. You know, you cannot have politicians prostitute with reckless abandon. That today you believe in this, tomorrow you believe in something else, and you can be whipped by the whims of whoever is at State House. I mean, we can't run a democracy like that. It is the reason why, even if we make noise, listen to what Kenya Kwanza politicians are telling us, that not even a comma will be changed on the finance bill. Why is it that not even a comma will be changed on the finance bill? Do you want to live in a country where each and every other MP agrees with a document that is voluminous, that they all are going to rubber stamp? And if you go through the newspapers, you realize that there are spaces that have been given to the regime's voices. And what they're telling us is that if anyone has a problem with the bill, they go and debate at the floor of parliament. And that is my worry, that if you can get people to go to the floor of parliament and think the same way, then we have a problem. And if you can have a way of reigning on politicians, elected politicians, to have political party discipline, it will serve us well going into the future. It may look like something that is against the current regime and what they want to push, but it is the best thing we can do going forward.
Okay, and we have to take a break. But Joe, I'm going to come back to you after the break, because this is one of the Azimio resolutions, the issue that Kenya Kwanza must agree that all Jubilee MPs have defected to resign and face by-elections. Do you think that that's the right way to go? We're going to be having that discussion when we come back. The hashtag is MLiveNTV. Talk to us back in a short while.
Let's get straight to it. Ready for whatever, we gon' ride. Line them up, let's go toe to toe. Tell them pick a side. Put in work, we don't play no games. Watch it running high. Savage mode, we gon' keep it G. Yeah, you know the vibe. When it's meal time, who gon' tell my dogs we can't eat? Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm a threat.
Get the Ballin' Twister box for only $7.50. NBA, KFC, balling all day.
My skin is my identity and deserves care made specially for me. New Nivea Radiant and Beauty Advanced Care with 5 oils and 5 vitamins helps reduce appearance of stretch marks in just 2 weeks for your shade of beautiful.
Daring Abroad makes me dare. It's the only show of its kind in the world. And now, it's bigger.
And even more entertaining and informative than before.
Hapa kunaitwa Kakoe na inatubaba sana.
From London to Jersey Island.
Goma in the Democratic Republic of Congo to the scenic features of Uganda, the Pearl of Africa.
And many more places abroad and at home.
I watch Daring Abroad. I like the stories which people bring.
Daring Abroad every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. with repeats every Sunday at 1:30 p.m. on NTV.
Cascadia Apartments at Two Rivers Development in Nairobi with a Madaraka offer till 30th June 2023. Price start from 9.2 million. Call us today on 0742 342 722 or text Cascadia to 22365.
All right, welcome back to the program. You are watching AM Live as we take a look at some of the political developments in the country. Azimio rejecting new taxes, seeking by-election. Now, Azimio is arguing that they are calling for all Jubilee MPs allied to the Kenya Kwanza coalition to face by-election. The party is also urging Jubilee members of parliament holding parliamentary leadership positions to relinquish them. Joe, as we look at that, these are some of the demands that have been brought forward by the Azimio La Umoja One Kenya coalition, and this is just among many of the demands that were there and the bipartisan talks. Do you agree that at least for the survival of these talks, for the to ensure that we do not hit a rock, that we must sort of adhere to some of these demands that Jubilee MPs allied to the administration should now pave the way and go seek a fresh mandate, like what Hezbon was saying? Is that fair?
I am in total agreement with Azimio agenda on cost of living, and in total agreement that we need to have...
to reject the finance bill? Not to
reject the finance bill, but we need to have a conversation on the cost of living, finance bill, affordable housing issue. We need to have a conversation as a country, as a people. We need to have a conversation. But on the other two issues that Azmi are raising, to me, they are not, they are minor issues. And maybe there's something behind going on, but they are using it for other purpose. Because it's a very interesting moment to be alive in this country. That whatever things that Jubilee are issuing us with, the ultimatums and everything that they are pronouncing today, is the same thing that Uhuru did last year. When Duale was launching his book, in one of the chapter, he said the 22 minutes when he was sacked as the leader of majority in the House, the issues within Jubilee were well conversed last year. We had an issue with the leadership. So it's not news item anymore of whatever is going on in Jubilee currently. I'm not surprised with whatever is going in Jubilee. I was a strong Jubilee member, and we were chased out from Jubilee because people did not want to listen to us. So whatever is going on in Jubilee is something, it's not news. It's normal. The only issue that as a young person in this country I have is that we need politics based on principle, based on issue. That if today I take a certain position, I must be able to convince my supporters and be able to convince myself that this is my position, whatever comes. But this issue of people making about turn, yes, I'm a supporter of Kenya Kwanza. I'm in support of people supporting the president agenda. But we must have principles. You cannot be a Jubilee member, you cross the floor of the House and continue enjoying the privileges of being a Jubilee member. That one I'm in total agreement. The same case scenario.
So you agree with the Azimio team?
Not agreeing with Azimio. I'm not agreeing with Azimio. What I'm saying is that we must do our politics with certain principle. We must do our politics with certain,
but isn't that
certain
what
level
Azimio
of morality.
is advocating for?
Not what they're advocating for. What they are using this as collective issues to scuttle the bipartisan talk so that they can twist the government to go the route of the handshake. That is the agenda. But for me, I'm talking about the political hygiene we have in this country. Like when we were on the break, we were talking about the Atwoli about turn. We were in Busia on Sunday. I saw with my own eyes Amos Wako declaring that President William Ruto, you are the duly elected president. Yet he was among the people who went to Bomas to force Chebukati to change the result or moderate the result. So I'm talking about those issues. But you can't
substantiate those claims, right?
I can substantiate. There are reports, there are video clips about the people who went there. Even the president is on record saying that he gave the general the job despite the fact that he was among the team that went to Bomas. So as a young person, for me, what matters is the principle, what matters is the political hygiene. Let us have leaders who today, when they say it's yellow, tomorrow they should not wake up and say it's black.
And isn't it that political hygiene when Azimio says that if you're within the Jubilee Party, which is under Azimio, then just ship out from Azimio and from Jubilee Party and seek a fresh mandate under, for example, UDA or any other party?
Not just seek fresh mandate. Azimio, they know the process of making leaders who have crossed the floor of the House to do the necessary. This is not about Kenya Kwanza forcing the Jubilee members. It's about Azimio sorting out their problem in Azimio. Because
so you are not seeing it as a meddling of the Jubilee Party by the ruling administration?
It's not meddling. Let me give you a simple scenario, a local scenario. When Jalango, Professor Tom Ojienda went to State House, Jalango was kicked out from their caucus in which was in Machakos. There was a lot of story about Jalango joining Kenya Kwanza. Jalango came out and explained himself that even if today he receives another call from the president and the agenda of the meeting is about the people of Langata, I will go to that meeting. Just suppose that with what happened during the burial of the late freedom fighter, Mama. Raila was there. He issued his statement. They disagreed on certain issues, they agreed. They were watching football with the president. And people were clapping and everybody was happy within the Azimio group that now we are seeing something going on. So let us not mix the two. If it's about issues that affect this country, everybody is encouraged and everybody is advantaged to have that conversation. Let it not be single-handedly being given to the people who own this political party. And the issues with the political parties in this country, Majority of political parties are special purpose vehicles of going to seek for power. After that, this political party are folded and they operate like a kiosk. So today, to me, the issue within Jubilee is the question, the biggest question that everybody is asking. Who is going to be the next kingpin of Mount Kenya? That is the politics.
So you're saying it's
nothing
what,
to
succession politics?
Yes, it's
All
about succession politics. It's nothing to do with this
Let's hear
other issue.
from Jim, and what do you think of all this debacle surrounding the Jubilee Party?
So I don't think there's a coup looming in Jubilee. The coup in Jubilee already took place. The coup took place, no, and it succeeded. UDA gobbled all positions in so-called Jubilee strongholds. And Jubilee only managed slightly over 30 members of parliament. And remember, in the last assembly, they had over 100 members of parliament. So in my opinion, whoever wanted to raid Jubilee, raided Jubilee proper and went into Mount Kenya, which was supposedly the bedroom of Jubilee, and did a good job. Jubilee could not, at least as per the numbers available to the public, even manage to bring enough numbers to the Azimio partners, according to the numbers publicly available. They could not bring those numbers. And so what we are seeing, the call that Opio and I was saying that they're asking Kenya Kwanza to allow, Kenya Kwanza has no powers to allow for by-elections.
Yes.
The Kenya Kwanza does not sign off on by-elections. If Jubilee finds out that these guys are not their members, they are struck off the members register, the moment you cease being a member of a political party, then you automatically cease being a member of parliament. It is automatic, because that is the party that took you to the floor of the house. Not unless you go to court and find a way, wiggle your way around it. So Jubilee has all that it takes to strike off all the supposed traitors from its party list. Those who are struck off from the party list, write to the speaker and notify the speaker of this, and the speaker will automatically declare those positions vacant.
Is it
IBC will then do its job.
Jim, is it traitors, or was it within their own democratic right to choose, you know, the direction that these members of these elected members of parliament chose, you know, by saying that we believe in the ideology of the president, and that's why we want to move to this side? Isn't it within their democratic right?
So that's why I said supposed trait. I'm sort of quoting them, because in my opinion, when you go to political parties are run, there are certain rules. The Political Parties Act establishes those rules. And individual political parties have their own party constitutions. You cannot go to the floor of the House with one vehicle and then champion and advance the cause of another. That is not fidelity to political party discipline and principles. So if then, in the wisdom of the party, according to their own rules, the rules which you swore to and which you signed to, because when you go to the floor of the House, you are representing the members of your constituency, courtesy of the political party. There are people who, without the political party, would never have seen the floor of the House. There are people who, without the political parties, they would never be called Honorable XYZ. So they owe their membership to that House so much to their constituents as they owe it to their party. They are members of committees. They would never have been members of those committees if it were not because of those parties. Remember, business in parliament is transacted on the basis of those committees and the House business committees. So those committees are constituted on the basis of party numbers and party strengths. So you would not transact, you would not legislate, which is your primary role. You would not represent, you would not oversight, if it were not for your political party. So discipline to the political party is, I would dare say, paramount. You have to be disciplined. However, in the event that you choose to go an alternative direction to the party, in the event that you cease to share in the ideologies of your political party, and you realize that now you have a Eureka moment, you have a Damascus moment, and you choose to now go a different way, the honorable thing to do, now that you're called honorable, the honorable thing to do is either resign from your political party and go back to your electorate. In fact, if I was a Jubilee member from Mount Kenya, I would happily resign from that post. The reason is UDA has serious momentum in Mount Kenya. And there's a chance that Jubilee, as currently constituted, cannot put up a spirited fight in a by-election. There's the chance they cannot.
Yes, Joe.
Whatever my brother is saying is true. But some of us who originated from Jubilee understand the problems within Jubilee. The person who proposed to be the leader of Jubilee, that is the former President Uhuru Kenyatta, doesn't want to listen, doesn't want to talk to the members of Jubilee. A political party belongs to members. When we were in Jubilee, we were telling the president then that our members do not support the handshake, are not in agreement with the position you have taken of going through the handshake, bringing BBI. Our members are not in position. Our members are not in support. And if you want to know as the party leader, allow this party to have national delegates conference where they will tell you their problem. He didn't want to listen. It is the same situation currently going on in Jubilee, because the elected members are representatives of the members of that political party. They have been given that chance to voice their voices. And they are telling the parties with the party, which is Jubilee, that as much as our member supported us and elected us, our members feel that the politics of the day is to work with Kenya Kwanza. The politics of the day is to be aligned with the reality on the ground that Kenya Kwanza seems to be far much ahead with Azimio from where we come from. And that one, the party leader of the so-called the remnants of Jubilee doesn't want to listen, because from where I stand, Jubilee died long time ago. Whatever Uhuru Kenyatta is trying to grapple with.
Isn't it what Jim says, that if you do not share that ideology, and like you say, if Jubilee died, go back to the people, and you know, like for example, a majority of these members of parliament are from the Mount Kenya region, right? Where UDA is is a strong contender there. Suddenly Jubilee then won't have even the power to fight UDA.
The members in Jubilee still think they have a room to play games or bargain. They haven't reached there yet of taking that route. They are still in this. They are still in cat and mouse game, whereby they're trying to twist each other so that they can see the reality of the day. But the bottom line is this: if the elected leaders of Jubilee, the almost 34 elected members, they are working with Kenya Kwanza. They are telling the party hierarchy that this is the route. This is where our people want us to belong. Then I think it's a honorable thing that the party structure or the party leadership should understand and be able to listen to them, to the elected members. But now, this is the route, the way my brother suggested, that if today or tomorrow those elected members resign and they seek fresh mandate within Kenya Kwanza, they have a huge chance. They have a huge chance to get re-elected with UDA in Central. So it's something that they will debate among themselves. And also some of these things, it's a personal decision. Most of these things, it's a personal decision, and it's about principle and political hygiene.
Yes, husband.
You know, I think the law is very clear. You know, but we are not honorable enough, you know, to follow the dictates of the law. And therefore, it needs to be even made clear on what constitutes. Because, you know, getting an MP to resign because they've ceased to identify with the political party that took them to parliament, and they are socializing with another political party, is very difficult. I mean, in the last regime, even getting a senator who was nominated, you know, out of the Senate proved impossible because of how we litigate almost everything in this country. But the hesitance by Parliament to have clarity on what would constitute a member of Parliament whose seat has to be declared vacant because of how they socialize with a totally different political party is because they don't know what will happen tomorrow. And that's what my friend Joy is talking about. You know, they are playing cat and mouse games. But let me just make two things clear. The whole idea of Jubilee elected leaders in the last regime did not support the handshake and BBI, I think, to me, is a false narrative. It is just that there was a faction of Jubilee that had decided that all they were doing day and night, 7 days of the week, 365 days of the year from 2018 was to scuttle anything President Uhuru Kenyatta was doing. It is the reason why even the proposals that were on BBI were sneaked through an official communication to Parliament to create positions that were actually envisioned in the BBI document. And then number two, to say that any elected leader in Jubilee can now, move to UDA and seek a fresh mandate and win because UDA is popular, is, I think, utopian, to say the least. There is no government in the whole world that has assumed power and become unpopular like the current regime. A government that wants to tax people in the name of, we have to live within our means, and is spending beyond its means. Absolute spending, reckless spending, creating offices. And, these things are in the public domain. The chief economic advisor of the president came out and said, there is too much wastage. And you see, when someone who is inside is talking
across governments, as when we've had this discussion
yes,
before.
No.
Across different governments, not just
yes, across different government. But you see, we are talking about the government of the day that is supposed to curb that wastage. And when someone who is inside talks about wastage, you can actually read in between the lines. It may not be wastage. It may be worse than wastage. Wastage becomes a sanitized word. So there's nothing that you can convince an elected member of Jubilee to go to Mount Kenya and they will win an election. And then number two, even those numbers, and Jim was very careful to say the official figures, even those numbers of the elected leaders at the presidential vote are still contestable. And there is no authentic entity that has come out to dispute some of these things. So I can tell you, there is no member of Jubilee who will vacate his seat and go and seek a fresh mandate. And then number two, even these members of Jubilee who are going to other political parties, they're not going in the interest of the people who elected them. They are going because they are pawns in a war that they don't understand.
Okay.
In the next few years, if Jubilee dies the way people want to kill Jubilee, and I want to believe it will not, because I believe in multi-party democracy, I think they will live to rule, these machinations that they are involved in right now.
Okay, let's wind up on that because we're almost out of time, but I just want to get quick comments and final remarks with regard to this because I believe it's also quite important. Yesterday, Haji was grilled over a decision to pull high-profile graft cases. That's now the National Intelligence Service Director General nominee Nurdin Haji, who's the outgoing Director of Public Prosecutions, and he did speak before the National Assembly's Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Relations Committee. He was asked to account for his performance as Director of Public Prosecutions and to convince members of Parliament why he would excel at the intelligence docket. Let me begin with you, actually, Joe. What do you make of his performance? Just very quickly, DPP Nurdin Haji, as now, if he is approved, is going to be the next chief spy.
DPP, former ODPP Haji is an advocate, but basically his career path was in intelligence. So he was picked from intelligence. So naturally he
would go back
where he's more suitable is in intelligence world, because for those who are aware that he's among the people from the intelligence community who helped us to sort out the issue with the terrorism. And even you could see from already, he knows when he was talking about the issue of Shakahola, he said that there's enough intelligence that the intelligence community collected on issues to do with Shakahola, but the relevant authorities did not take up the role. So he's best suited there.
His performance as DPP, how would you rate it?
His performance on DPP...
He was put into, on the spotlight, especially with regards to the withdrawal of the graft cases that we saw.
Because his performance was majorly affected by the politics of the day. The cases that he was handling were more political, more than the real factual cases.
Okay. Let me get Hezbon just very quickly. I know we're running out of time.
Well, I'm a big fan of Haji, big fan of how he's resolute on everything he does.
His performance?
How he stands firm. But in terms of his performance, I want to say that there's a lot of gray areas in his performance, and there's politics involved.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm saying I'm a big fan is because at some point I think the razzmatazz by the DCI, the former DCI, was just too much. And I think it's Haji who was coming in to rein in, on the out of this world way in which corruption cases, Kamata Fridays were being expedited. But I must say that there are certain gray areas that even if he's going to intelligence, he has to address. I mean, if those cases were not worth going on with, and they were going to collapse, I think, in my opinion, the best thing would have been to allow those cases to go until the end and exonerate those guys.
Do you think this is going to taint his legacy?
It has already, it has.
Right.
I mean, there was an award that he was given that has since been withdrawn.
By the Transparency International.
Yeah, by the Transparency International. I think it has already done that. I don't think there is enough ground to deny him that position, and it seems like from all quarters, this is something that has already been decided on, and MPs will not have a problem with it. Will approve it, yes.
Jim, very quickly as you move forward, his, this nominee, his performance over the couple of years under the Jubilee administration, he served a little bit under Kenya Kwanza. Now he's going to take over as the chief spy if approved. What do you make of his performance?
I think he did well. Victims of extrajudicial killings, for the first time in a long time in this country, we had police officers who acted outside of the law actually being jailed for years, unheard of before. We had cases of corruption prosecuted. A few people actually returned money and gained a few shillings here and there. So, to be honest, given the circumstances and the politics of the day,
there was heavy political influence in his line of work?
Definitely, it's a very political office. I mean, we'd like to call it an independent, but it's a very political office. And we saw it. Immediately, Kenya Kwanza came in. All Kenya Kwanza nominees for different positions, their cases were dropped. And that tells you how political the position is. I think as a spy, we don't know much about spies in this country, to be honest, to even judge and say whether he's qualified or not. We don't know what they do. So I am not very qualified to say how he'll perform in that role, given that it is a spy role. So
we'll have to wait and see.
Let's just hope.
I don't know though. Yeah.
Let's just hope he will do a good job spying on whoever he needs to spy on.
Now you've given me a new task to find out exactly what the role entails. Yeah. All right, but thank you, Jim India, political and governance analyst, Hesbon Owila, media and political communications expert, as well as Joe Halende, lawyer and political and governance analyst as well. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in this morning to converse around this matters of interest right now for public interest. And of course, we'll continue having these conversations as the day moves forward. Remember, also tomorrow is Madaraka Day. The celebrations will be marked in Embu County, and we will be bringing you a full coverage of the event from tomorrow, the whole day. So you want to stay tuned for that, but also all the other stories that will be making headlines today. Your World is coming up shortly with Winnie Lubembe. Stay tuned for that. My name is Zainab Ismail. Have yourself a good morning.